My name is Kayla. I graduated from college 5 years ago. I moved out and started living on my own when I began college. That's because my father was a bit of an eccentric person. I was his first child, but he had hoped for a boy. When I was born a girl, he didn't even try to hide his disappointment and was hard on my mother. Even as I grew up, my father never accepted me as his daughter and hardly showed me any love. I have no fond memories of my father from my childhood. All I remember are his cold eyes and the many words he used to reject me. My mother protected me and showered me with love. Even taking on the role of my father, I was able to endure my father's harsh treatment thanks to her. 6 years later, Emery was born. My father was disappointed again that it was a girl, but something changed, and he started to adore Emery. However, his attitude towards me remained the same. It was clear that he treated Emery and me differently. As I went through elementary, middle, and high school, I was treated by my father as if I didn't exist. On the other hand, Emery was praised by my father for even the smallest things, and he bragged about how cute she was, like a little doll. In contrast, the way he would sigh and say,
"Oh, but Kayla,"
was quite a shock to me. My mother would comfort me, saying, "Kayla is different from Emery, but she's very cute too." But it didn't resonate with my shattered confidence. When I went to college, I decided to move out and live on my own. I loved my mother, but I had no feelings for my father, who showed no interest in me. I couldn't bear to live with him any longer. He reluctantly paid my college admission fee, but declared that he would not help with tuition or living expenses. He said that if there was any money, it would be used for Emery. I had to hustle to make ends meet through scholarships and part-time jobs. My college life was consumed by studies and work, with no room for the typical joys of youth. I had almost no connection with my family during my student days. My mother would contact me occasionally, but there was no communication from my father or Emery, and I didn't reach out to them either. When I was job hunting after graduation, the most important thing for me was the salary. I had to repay half of the scholarship I received, and I knew from my part-time work how important income was. With the recommendation from my senior professor and my hungry spirit in the interviews, I secured a job offer from my first-choice global consulting firm. My mother was thrilled as if it were her own achievement, but my father and Emery showed no reaction. I thought I was prepared for that, but it still left me feeling lonely and empty. Reaching a state of enlightenment isn't so easy, is it? I threw myself into my work once I joined the company. I think I needed a place to channel these lingering feelings of frustration. Thanks to that, I learned my job faster than any of my peers. With support from my seniors, I was able to satisfy major clients and secure ongoing contracts. I was steadily climbing the ladder of success. My income was rising in proportion to my achievements. 5 years into my career, I had grown into a leader, trusted with multiple projects. During this successful period at work, I received a call from my father, who I hadn't heard from in years.
"Your mother's had an accident and is paralyzed on one side. I want you to come home and take care of her. You're probably just loafing around, so I'll give you a task."
I was shocked to hear that my mother needed care after an accident. I hadn't told my father about my job, so he had assumed that I was unemployed and useless. But more than that, I was worried about the misfortune that had befallen my mother. I didn't want to return home, but my desire to help my beloved mother was stronger. I immediately applied for remote work at my company. Fortunately, my global company was ahead of others in allowing telework, and the environment was in place. I decided not to cancel the lease on my current apartment, thinking it might be best to keep it, even though it seemed wasteful to pay rent. So, I returned to my family home, taking only what I needed. It had been about 9 years since I left home to go to college. My mother's condition was more serious than I had thought. She was paralyzed on one side and couldn't walk on her own. Luckily, her mind was unaffected, and she could speak normally, but her immobile body looked very painful. I confronted my father about why he hadn't contacted me for the several months since my mother's accident and her home care, but he was as indifferent as ever, saying,
"Telling you wouldn't make her better. I called you this time because I had no choice."
Indeed, I, not being a doctor, couldn't do anything to help my mother recover. But I couldn't believe a father who wouldn't inform his daughter about her mother's plight. Months after my mother became immobile, The house was in a terrible state. Clothes were strewn everywhere, dishes were piled high in the sink, and the rooms were covered in dust and garbage. My mother's care had been completely neglected, and her back was covered in bed sores. I had no expectations of my father, but Emery was supposed to be living there too. What had Emery been doing? The answer became clear with her first words. I can't do housework, so I can't take care of Mom either. I'm relieved now that Kayla's back. Emery, spoiled as she grew up, had become a self-centered person who couldn't do anything around the house. I started by cleaning the rooms. The mess and the dirt that had accumulated over several months couldn't be fixed in a day, and I spent nearly a week on this task. It took me that long because I had to care for my mother during that time. My mother kept saying she was sorry to have me care for her, but I cheerfully and energetically attended to her, hoping she would get better. While I was engaged in housework and caregiving, neither my father nor Emery did anything to help. Far from helping, my father would complain.
The food tastes awful. What are you slacking off for? You're clumsy at taking care of your mother. You have plenty of time since you're just loafing around. Do it properly.
To him, it was only natural that I should do the housework and caregiving. Emery would say, Kayla, wash my clothes for me. I'm wearing them to school tomorrow. Kayla, tea please. I was treated like a servant, especially by my father, who was convinced I was a NEET. Indeed, I was mostly shut in my room doing telework, housework, and caregiving. But to my father, it seemed like I was just a shut-in. Even though telework was my main work mode, I still had to go to the office regularly. When I returned home, my father would sometimes be standing at the entrance, accusing me angrily.
You're just a shut-in NEET, and yet you're gallivanting around. Take care of the house properly.
His angry voice echoed throughout the house. From behind him, Emery would add, you're really useless. Just going out to play? I was exhausted. Every time I left the house to go to work, I would be met with insults and sarcasm from the two of them. I had made it a habit to go to my kept apartment and relax alone, tidying up the room before returning home. I was truly glad I had kept this room. The unreasonable demands and harsh treatment from my father and Emery grew stronger day by day.
You must have some savings. Even if you're a NEET, contribute money to the household.
My father, who worked me so hard, was now demanding money. I'm going on a day trip with my friends, so give me some funds. Emery, who did nothing around the house, was begging me for pocket money. What was I to those people? Not a daughter, not a sister. The painful days continued. One time, Emery screamed, My ring is gone, Kayla. Do you know where it is? Of course I didn't know anything about Emery's ring, and I had no interest in it since our tastes were different. When I told her I didn't know, she stormed into my room. I was slow to react to Emery's sudden action, and I was a beat late in following her into the room. When I arrived, I heard Emery's triumphant voice from inside. See, here's the ring. Kayla stole it, didn't she? Emery came out of the room with the ring, pointing her finger at me and shouting. There was no way that thing was in my room. I immediately realized that Emery had set a trap. It was harassment for not giving her pocket money. Emery quickly tattled to my father, who had just come home.
Stealing Emery's things. You're truly pathetic. I don't remember raising a daughter who would steal.
No matter how much I explained, my father wouldn't believe me. Emery added, We don't need a thief, Kayla, do we?
If it weren't for your mother's care, I'd kick you out right now. Know some shame.
And so I was labeled a thief. One evening, at dinner, my father suddenly became furious for reasons unknown.
You useless person. Can't even do housework properly. Making food like this. Still not contributing money to the house. Do you think your current work is enough? You're just a shut-in who gallivants around. I can't stand it anymore. I'll destroy your plaything.
My father yelled and headed towards my room. My plaything? My computer? That's my essential work tool. If it's destroyed, it would be a disaster. I followed my father to my room and protected my precious work companion, just as he was about to lay hands on my computer. Emery was watching from behind, smirking, around the time my mind and body were reaching their limits. My mother passed away peacefully. She was always grateful for my care. and was pained by the way my father and Emery treated me. I felt my strength draining from my body. My heart was so shattered that I forgot to cry. Father and Emery were not only tearless, but acted as if a nuisance had been removed. Though we were in the same tearless situation, our reasons were 180 degrees apart. After my mother's funeral was quietly conducted, my father called me into the living room.
Your mother's gone, and you're no longer needed. I want you to leave immediately. We don't need a useless NEET who can't even contribute money to the house.
I had a feeling he would say something like this, but I never thought it would actually happen. I asserted my hard work up to now, but my father was adamant about me leaving. Emery added, "Are you planning to stay here and be a NEET? You're such a parasite."
A parasite, that's a good word. You're like a tick or a flea.
I felt dizzy from the barrage of harsh words.
Also, about your mother's inheritance, you must renounce it. There's nothing for you.
I hadn't thought about my mother's inheritance at all. The love I received from her was enough. It was something I had never received from my father or Emery. I don't want it. I'll renounce it, and I'll leave, okay? I'll leave right away. I asked for one day's grace to pack, and immediately began preparations. The next day my father said,
"Are you ready to move? Hurry up."
"I'm leaving. I'll have nothing to do with this house or you two anymore. Goodbye." I loaded my packed belongings into the taxi I had called. I realized anew how few possessions I had. Returning to my parents' house after 9 years and leaving again. This time, I would never return. I had spent a hollow time realizing the reality of my father and Emery, but I was satisfied that I could help my mother. I returned to my kept apartment and applied to switch from telework to regular work. However, I was glad I had kept the room. My previous daily life returned. No, I worked even harder than before. I wanted to forget everything. About 3 months later, I received a call from my father, whom I had cut ties with. I didn't want to answer, but I reluctantly picked up the phone.
"Hey, what's this promissory note? It's an outrageous amount, isn't it? Are you a NEET? How much are you earning a month?"
Frantic, my father began firing questions, one after another. Of course I'm not a NEET. On the contrary, thanks to my dedication to my job, I believe my income is considerably higher than others my age. And I had quite a bit of savings accumulated from working. When I first started caring for my mother, I bought various equipment and tools to make her environment a little better. Knowing that the household was financially strained, I also contributed to the monthly living expenses to ease my mother's burden. Yes, long before my father demanded money for the house, I had been contributing. I even paid for Emery's tuition to alleviate my mother's worries. My mother, grateful for my various expenses, insisted on making it clear and had a promissory note drawn up between us. My financial support had amounted to a considerable sum, and that promissory note had overlaid my father and Emery in the form of a negative inheritance. As for me, I was exempt because I had renounced the inheritance. In other words, the two of them had to repay all the loans from me. After hearing the full explanation from me, my father was speechless. He screamed that he would also renounce the inheritance, but the two of them had already touched part of it, so they had no right to do so. Work hard and pay it back properly, and don't contact me anymore. I've cut ties with you. I ignored my ranting father, hung up the phone, and blocked his calls. Afterward, my uncle, my mother's brother, also suddenly caused great confusion for my father and Emery. I had met my uncle for the first time in a while at my mother's funeral, and after he noticed something was off about me, I confided everything to him. The family home was owned by my uncle, and my mother had been renting it. The right to rent passed to the two of them through inheritance, but my uncle refused to renew. Legally, tenants had the upper hand, but they couldn't stand up to my uncle, and due to their misdeeds, they ended up having to leave. My father, who had been on the restructuring list at his company for some time, was finally selected and had to leave, Emery couldn't pay tuition and had to drop out, even though graduation was near. Father and Emery, who lost their home and jobs, moved into a small apartment. Most of my father's retirement money went to repay the debt to me. It would be difficult for him to find a new job at his age. Whether Emery, a college dropout, can find a decent job is also questionable. The two of them were becoming neats in a dark, small room. Thanks to my ambitious return to work, I succeeded in acquiring new clients and launching new projects. I was promoted to the first female division head. It's a bit late for a global company to have its first female division head. I am striving to nurture the next generation and make the company more open.